this is what I need in my life, and so we'll use that to help attract it.
Hey, this is Sarah Marie, and you are listening to Time in the Studio. Thanks for being here, where we share growth tips for earth-loving creatives who want to dig in and flourish. You ever had a teacher who changed your life? I've been lucky to have many wonderful teachers throughout life, and Lisa Ganora is certainly one of them, who helped to transform my health and my world. And the stories she shares in this interview may very likely benefit you to transform how you treat your body, the food you eat, and the water that keeps you fluid. A reminder that I've begun offering a concise version of the conversations that I get to have with people for the public, and a full-length episode for Patreon supporters that's available at the $3 and up levels. And in this concise talk, Lisa shares a simple way to deal with addictive patterns in our lives and tips for budding herbalists. We also touch on a great remedy for anxiety and how to get in right relationship with water. For the extended full conversation, we have discussions about the endocannabinoid system and the energetics of cannabis, and her journeys as a sailor and travels in New Zealand where she encountered tree-sized ferns, and so much more. It's a great conversation. Lisa directed the Colorado School of Clinical Herbalism for many years and has taught at conferences and schools around the world. She also wrote a great book called Herbal Constituents, and she started an herb farm and healing wellness center in Paonia that is so exciting. We also talk about ways to conserve water, and it's so inspiring and exciting to hear about the hydrotherapy pools and things that she has going on in Paonia there. So yeah, thanks so much for listening and for being here. If you enjoy this episode, please feel free to screenshot it and share it to your stories and let me know your thoughts. It's wonderful to understand what resonates with people. You could also share it with a friend who you think would enjoy the show. A big shout out to Karina Rep for the show music. The intro is part of her song Release Me, and the outro is part of Need You, Don't Need You. And be sure to check out her work as well, and her Instagram is at Karina Rep. Oh, and another reminder, we do talk about some plants in this episode. This show is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research. This is not a substitute for a doctor visit. Okay, I hope you're well, and let's get into it. Cha-cha-cha.
So you want to talk about magic,
Yes.
How things work? Oh my God, are we recording? But how did I get into herbalism?
Yeah.
It's a funny, serious story, right? So how you get addicted to various things throughout your life, and some of the things are relatively harmless, and some of them are it's kind of sketch, and some of them are actually bad for you, and some of them are really, really bad for you. So I was 25, I think, years old, and I was living out in Provincetown. I was taking care of a hotel on the beach in the winter, right? So you're out the end of this Cape Cod, this giant landform that's how many thousands of miles of the Atlantic Ocean directly, east and northeast of it. And the wind howls through there. It was such a dramatic winter. I was I'm at the North Pole. Yeah, so I was out there and I was trying to figure out what's my thing, what are you going to be when you grow up? And I really like to play classical guitars, one of my big things. I really like to do photography. It fascinates me. not bad at writing. I'm not like, Shakespeare or anything. I can string a few sentences together, in a logical progression, especially if it's phytochemistry. But I'm like, who am I? At that in your 20s, you're like figuring out who you are, right? And I'm like, I don't know. Am I a musician? Am I an artist? Am I a photographer? What am I? What do I call myself? And so I was kind of cycling through all the possibilities for a while there. And then I somehow get out on Cape Cod for the winter. I don't even remember how that got started. But, you walk on the beach there. I mean, I don't know what a vortex is when people say there's a vortex in Sedona. I don't actually know what that is. But I know that the end of Cape Cod is literally a vortex. It's shaped by a spiral, like the Cape curves around and it spirals all the way around. And there's a breakwater you can walk across out to the sand spit that kind of completes that curve, and it's a weird, interesting place. So there I was trying to figure out, I was using dark Belgian baker's chocolate. So this was before like the resurgence of cacao, right? This was when you had Hershey's and baker's chocolate in America. And so there was this like weird little gourmet wine and cheese shop. It was directly between my house and all the places I walked to in Provincetown, pretty much. So I would go by it constantly. So I went in there one time and I saw that chocolate. And, they were like those kind of like little long, bricky, elongated, rectangular things. And either no sugar or very little. There was probably sugar in those, some sugar. Yeah. And so I got one, I bit it, my brain went, and like I have this little part of my personality. I have this little monkey brain. It's like, but I don't want to take any like hazardous stimulants or anything. Right. But I do like coffee. But so I did that and my brain just lit up and I was like, oh, that's nice. Because I was kind of like confused and depressed and like, the things you go through when you're trying to figure out who you are as a young adult. And I wasn't having the greatest time. It was kind of gnarly. And so I ate that, it lit me up, and I'm like, good, I'll have more because this is America, so more is better. Right? Oh, wait a minute, more is not always better. More is sometimes better. What about the times when more isn't better? That's a good one. But, so, I ate it. It made me feel better. I had more. It made me feel better. I had more. And what I didn't notice at first was how I crashed about an hour after indulging, right? I didn't make the connection between the indulging and the crashing, but I would crash like way low. Like, I don't even know why I'm bothered alive. Everything's fucked up. Yeah. I should just die or something. Not really. I didn't really mean it, but fuck, oh, I dropped an F-bomb. There you go. But, I would crash down into that realm of just like confusion and despair and like, I don't know, not even like knowing who I was and all that. And it was shitty, right? And then I'd eat more chocolate and it'd bring me back out. Clearly there was something in there that influencing my, psycho-neuro chemistry milieu or whatever. Right. But yeah, so I got addicted to it. After a while, I finally made the connection, the baker's chocolate, the low crash. And it was just about the same amount of time, so I got super high off of it, which is interesting because like, it's like, I don't know what kind of chocolate they were selling in that. I don't know, man. And I've always been a sucker for sugar, right? I'm super attracted to sugar because it makes me like this until I crash, right? And so I used to eat a lot of sugar. So the sugar and the chocolate together were just like really influential on my metabolism. So after a while, I noticed it. I eat this, I crash an hour later. I should stop. That's probably not good for me. So it occurred, the light bulb went off. Okay, let me not do that. Right. So the next time I walk by the store, what did I do? Can I have some baker's chocolate? So I tried and I failed to stop. on purpose, like the old fudder-duddy called willpower didn't seem to actually be effective. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So then did plants save you, or how did?
Well, yeah. So so this happened, and I'm like, I'm addicted. It occurred to me because I couldn't stop doing it, right? Because I kept going back and going back and going back. And then I'm like, I think that could be bad. You know, I'm doing the hard drugs, right? Building chocolate. But wow, it had a grip on me. Dude, it's like a freaking plugging into the electric, like, you know?
Yeah.
And so.
It's a turn on, chocolate. I hear you.
Yeah. So I preach to the choir, right? So I talked to this friend of mine who was an alcoholic, and she was like 9 months in recovery or something. And I'm like, can I run something by you? Because I know this is like kind of weird, but this is what happened. So I told her what happened. And she's like, you can get addicted to anything.
Yeah.
It's about the relationship between you and the thing. So everyone's going to have a different dance or a different relationship with a different substance, you know? Yeah. And if it's harming you, then that's an addiction. You can't just stop, you know? So that turned on a light bulb. And I said, well, what did you do? And she said, have you ever heard of dandelion root?
Oh, wow.
1986, right?
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And I was like, you mean like dandelions? Like, and she's like, yeah. She's like, this is what somebody told me, and it works. And I'm like, okay. She said, you make yourself a good, strong dandelion root, you know, decoction or infusion or whatever, a nice, good water extraction of it, you know.
Yeah.
Decoction, you'll probably get more of the power, but if you want to kind of ease into it, you might want to start with an infusion, right? Nice. I don't remember which one we started with, but she's like, yeah, you make dandelion root tea, and then you just have it handy. And then when you want your substance, right, instead of going, no, I'm not going to do it, and having the struggle, which you'll probably lose, you turn to the dandelion root tea instead, and you drink a cup. Just drink a cup of it. And then you wait just a moment, and then go do whatever you need to do, right? Wow. If you need to go eat the chocolate. Don't fight it. And I was like, this is a completely different way of thinking about this sort of thing than I've ever encountered before, right? Early 20s. And I was like, heck, I'll try that. What do I got to lose? Sounds like an interesting experiment. So the funny part is I went into, there was a tiny health food store in that town, Provincetown, Massachusetts. Little bitty old-fashioned health food store, little bitty old building, like creaky roof, older lady behind the counter, you know, banks of herbs. It's the first time I ever went into a health food store, or one of the first, you know, and I was going to go up there and ask for a dandelion root. Dude, that was weird. That was scary. I was nervous. I'm like, you know, what are these people going to be like in there? Oh, dude. But I did it. I went in, and I'm like, I went up to the counter, and I'm like, and God knows what I looked like. I was probably white as a sheet. And she's like, why, of course, over there in the jar, help yourself, you know? And I'm like, interesting. Yeah. It's so funny that I was so nervous going in there, because now I'm like, blah, blah, herbalist, blah, 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 you know, but I was terrified. Not terrified, but scared.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I feel like it's not, especially at that time, it wasn't part of the culture at large. So I think it probably was especially scary at that time. But I think even now, people are sometimes a little scared and off-put by herbalism. So I think that's a good reminder of like just that you can embrace something so simple as the root of a dandelion, and that it can help you.
And I'm like, wait a minute. Now, I'm not saying that would happen the same way with everybody,
right?
But it took just like a short amount of time. Like I don't remember exactly because it's been a while, but you know, 2 weeks or less, I would say, where I would go for the chocolate and I would drink the dandelion, and then I would wait. And then instead of eating the whole thing was this long. I was like, relative length. They're about as long as my face. Instead of eating the whole thing, I would eat half of it. And then I'd be like, I'm done. That was enough.
Yeah.
And the more dandelion I drank, the shorter that segment got every time I went to it. That dandelion, it like weaned me off of chocolate.
That is so cool. I'm curious what you think it is about dandelion, like something in the energetics or the constituents or just the messages of that plant. Like why do you think it worked so well for your friend and for you? Because I can see it's in a lot of detox formulas, and I have some ideas, but I'm also curious.
Oh, I love that question. Okay, here's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And, some of this is like scientifically established. Some of it is hypotheses. Some of it is like, am I vibing in with the dandelion?
Yeah.
Do we have a dandelion in the house? Oh, hello. So first, dandelion is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Dandelion is one of those beings that's like, oh, there's a crack in the sidewalk. I could do that. I could make that work. Check this out. And it grows out of the crack in the sidewalk and like puts up a couple of flowers. And the flowers are like, like super dandelions because they've broken up through the cement, they're really bitter.
Yeah.
And so I think that plant is very powerful and very successful, and a lot of plants that there's one cultural method of looking down on plants like that. That's very commonly experienced, collective, dare I say, reality, or collective consciousness is maybe a better word. But people are like, they look at the dandelion and they're like, oh, that's bad.
Yeah,
that's bad. Look how bad that weed is. It's so bad. You have to kill it with poison, and you're just like, no. That story is so 1984. I mean, we're done with that shit. Look at this, how powerful this plant is. It's everywhere, right? And it makes this beauty, like what little kid doesn't like dandelions? Okay, maybe there's somebody who has a bad relationship with dandelions. Maybe they're super allergic to them, But in general, like what human doesn't love a dandelion when they're a kid before somebody teaches you not to?
You're so right. I mean, I think it is just like this little just bloom of joy and radiance and power and resilience. And it does have this like successful, like I can do anything energy.
It's exuberant. And it's like the sun, it's like you get that same like energizing effect that you do from the sun in a way. So, and they're bitter, right? Mm-hmm. So bitters is like the new, bitters is dawning on humanity right now.
Yeah, it is.
As like, oh, that's a really important like group of flavor phytochemicals that we, have sort of forgotten about. Let's try them, and they make us feel much better, So I think the bitters aspect of it, which is based in these terpenoids called sesquiterpene lactones, which are kind of like sticky and gummy. Like you break a dandelion stem, you see that white stuff ooze out, right?
Yeah.
Or you like pull a leaf off a wild lettuce related, and you see that white stuff ooze out, and it's like kind of tacky and super bitter,
Yeah.
Like that's sesquiterpene lactones, a really interesting group of molecules, right? Mm-hmm. So what's the relationship between sesquiterpene lactones and human experience?
Tell me more. What is it?
Yeah, well, you kind of have to try it on yourself because the relationship is different with every couple. But like a common experience is like, if you imagine just, you've done this, you've broken a dandelion and tasted the white stuff, right? Now you imagine what that's like, or coming out of a wild lettuce. Oh, it's like, whoa. It gives you like almost like a shock, a little kind of bitter shock.
Yeah.
Percent, not in a bad way, though, in a good way. Like if electrical shocks actually felt good, you know what I mean? Yeah. So that's what I call a vital stimulant, right? Or that's a characteristic of being a vital stimulant, right? And is to be able to get that kind of, whoa, my system is reacting, to get that going, just by the briefest of introductions. Yeah. So a vital stimulant, like the vital energy, the chi, the life power, it just like snaps it to attention. Whee! Vital stimulant, you know? And I think that's one reason why I like cacao so much. Now I have cacao, no sugar. A non-addictive relationship with sugarless cacao. Right.
Nice.
But it took many years to get there. For a long time, I could not touch the chocolate. It was repulsive to me after finally we were done. Because that was a learning experience, but I wouldn't want to keep doing it, you know?
Yeah.
But now, you know, my cacao thing is like, oh, I've got to finish updating this chapter tonight. Yeah, it's time to get rolling on that. What's it about? Alkaline. Let me get some cacao. And I go and I open the fridge and I get that, like, what is that, midnight coconut? You know, that one with a purple monkey on it. It's just like 100% cacao, no sugar added. It's so tasty, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll break off 1 or 2 squares of that. And I'll be like, here we go. And I'll be like, betel and alkaloids are my favorite molecules. So,
that's amazing.
Yeah, we have a good relationship now. And I think taking the sugar out of it was a big part, because I can't have a good relationship with sugar. Maybe in the future, but right now it's just like, it brings out that icky feeling of, I don't know, eating sugar.
Right. I get it. I feel that too. I love how Dandelion has helped transform your relationship both with Dandelion and with cacao, with chocolate.
Right?
Wow, it's really cool.
Yeah. And that really got me out of, because like, you know how like when you're in some kind of like sinkhole of addiction, it's just like you just sucks the energy down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, you feel bad about yourself. You just feel bad. Other people are like, oh.
I was curious how you ended up in New Zealand. And I'm also curious how your thoughts on teaching and herbalism and tips for budding herbalists who are trying to figure out how they can go to New Zealand.
Budding, I like that one. Yeah. Okay. So I went to New Zealand because the sailor part was I wanted to sail to New Zealand, but I didn't make it when I was younger. Yeah. Right. So I'm like, man, I have always wanted to see this country, because you hear things about it. You're like, there are bubbling mud pots and geysers in people's backyards. Okay. I want to go there.
Yeah.
So anyway, got over there. It was incredible. So it was a real satisfaction to me too, because I'd always wanted to go there. But budding young herbalists, let's see, partner up with somebody who's good at business.
That's a good idea. Or learn about business,
or be good at business.
Yeah.
Right? Because nobody's rolling out the economic red carpet for herbalism yet, unless it's cannabis. Having allies and mentors and a sense of, okay, how can I make this actually work? You know, not that chasing money is your primary purpose as an herbalist, because it's not.
Right.
You know, it's like having a good relationship with herbs and with people, and like becoming your healer, you know, becoming a healer in yourself, and like helping other people to become healers inside themselves. You know, I mean, that's the mission. But we happen to live in America, and that sets certain requirements and conditions, you know. Yeah. So it's good to understand those, whether or not you choose to engage with them. But if you do want to not be broke all the time, which is a very common experience for herbalists, I was one of them. I used to drive an old beater and lived in a teepee for a while because I didn't have a house, and you know, so used to be a hitchhiker on the Rainbow Trail.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And that was real interesting. It gets old after a while, you know, but wow, you learn a lot of stuff. That's for sure. But, you know, a lot of herbalists do that because herbal medicine is not only is it not an established, let's say, licensed profession in the United States, right? Which some people would want and some people wouldn't. Yeah. But not only that, it's kind of the opposite of that. It has been actively suppressed, you know, by different people at different time periods and different, you know, because I know people like to be like, well, they are doing this to us. And I'm like, who are they? Everybody's co-inventing reality simultaneously who's experiencing reality. So, whichever one you want to be in at the moment. But, it's, you can do that, and you can be broke all the time. And maybe that's where you want to be for a while, because you're doing something that's more important to you than having, enough money not to have to be like, oh shit, I got to sell something,
Yeah.
And it's weird right now too, so we don't quite know how to handle it.
Yeah, it is a weird time.
But what I see happening is, not to be discouraging, because herbalism is on fire.
Yeah, it is on fire.
It is, right? So you've seen it grow in the 5 years. Boom.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've seen it like growing, and then the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then it was like, right? Because people are like, oh, I have to take care of myself?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
I have to try to not catch a virus.
Mm-hmm.
I need to build up my immune system. How do I do that? And then they start looking at the nutrition and the foods, and then they look at the spices, and they look at the herbs,
Mm-hmm. I'd love to dive in a little bit to life at Elderberry's, life in Paonia. I don't know if you want to talk about the history of the school and your experience there too. Oh my
goodness, thank you for asking that.
There's just so much I want to talk about.
So interesting, right? Oh man, how long do you make a story?
I know.
So back in the day when Paul Bergner was running NAIMH in Boulder, right? That I had moved to town shortly after he started that school. And I'm like, well, here I am. I wonder where the herbalists are, So I started looking around, and I found that, and I'm like, I should go see them. So I dropped in, and I'm like, hey, I do this. And, so I started teaching for Paul, I think in maybe 2004 or 5,
cool.
Maybe.
Nice.
And, it would be like, come in for 9 hours or 12 hours of herbal constituents in the advanced herbalism program. I'm like, cool. I love talking about this stuff. So I went, and we became friends, and I just really was like, this place is cool. But, it's funny. I thought they were kind of weirdos too, because they were all into this thing called food intolerances. Well, I learned. But yeah, so then, we go out once in a while and talk about stuff and see each other at conferences and whatnot. And then one day I heard he wanted to retire and close the school.
Wow.
And by that point, he had schooled me on food intolerances. Mm-hmm. Pointed out to me that I had a dairy intolerance, most likely, and I was super skeptical. I was like, yeah, I love cheese. I'm not sure I want to go there. I want my cheese.
Yeah.
So it took a couple of months, and then finally he scienced me into it. He's like, look at this paper. I'll send you some papers. And I'm like, read this. Right. So I learned it was a struggle, but dude, it made me feel so much better, because I was getting neurological problems. I was getting peripheral neuropathy. I was getting sore joints, fatigue, brain fog, muscle cramps, weird things were happening. And I had conventional diagnoses, and got the MRI and been to the neurologist and all this stuff. And they're like, you have this. And the other one's like, you have that. And, I never quite believed any of those diagnoses entirely. But because there's a lot of overlap with stuff like that. So anyway, he's like, try an experiment, 6 weeks, strictly no dairy, anything and anything. Mm-hmm. And by that point, I knew I had brain lesions because I had an MRI. And they're like, look at this, look at that, look at this, look at that.
Gosh.
That's not good. You should do something about that, And I'm like, uh-oh, the brain. I like my brain. This is a problem, So I was motivated,
Definitely.
I was like, cheese, here's the balance, right? Cheese, So
that's a tough thing to weigh. I mean, I know.
Like when I'm dying and I can still eat, I want cheesecake.
Yes.
That's what I want, my last meal. Yeah. So, and I thought they were kind of weird. But then I tried it. I'm like, what have I got to lose? My brain is getting messed up here. This is serious. Try something, push yourself a little beyond your comfort zone here. So Paul showed me how to do that. He helped me out. He guided me with the dairy elimination. 6 weeks re-challenge. The next day, I was like, yay, re-challenge! Chomp, 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 dairy. Whoa, cheese, cream, it's awesome, pig out, And then the next day, bam, I felt like shit.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, that's interesting. That was pretty dramatic. Something definitely happened here. What's going on?
Yeah.
And skeptical. So I repeated. I was like, I don't want to believe that this is real, but it could be real. So let me do another set of experiments. So I repeated, gave it like a couple of weeks. Then I did 6 weeks strict avoidance. And then I re-challenged. Same thing happened.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, interesting. It happened twice in a row, just the same. Let me go for 3.
Because that's not enough information.
Well, but skepticism can be a great tool as long as you don't let it possess your soul. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? So I was like, and I really didn't want to give up dairy because I love dairy. I'm sexy, face it. But so not good for me, as it turns out.
Same page. Yeah.
Right. So anyway, I repeated it a third time. And they say when you're doing scientific research, you have to repeat something 30 times before it even gets close to, being some sort of, you can detect statistically significant effects of something, right? N equals 30. But, I couldn't do it 30 times. And you know why? Because it was freaking obvious. I didn't have to do it 30 times with myself. Now, that's not saying that would apply the same to somebody else, but with me, every single time the same thing happened, and it wasn't a good thing when I had it again. So I'm like, dude, he's right. Paul knows something I don't know. I remember that, because I'm a know-it-all, right? Basically, Paul had shown me a path that made me probably 70% better of all the stuff that was going wrong at the time. Also, I'll take 70% better, right on. I plateaued there for a while. But I'm like, that dude kind of saved my life. I mean, this could have gone downhill. I could have gotten just the incorrect treatment, the incorrect diagnosis, a bad reaction to some medication that people use for that. This is getting kind of sketch, So,
definitely. So
when he announced that he wanted to close the school, I was like, it just went off at me. I'm like, no, don't do that. Do you want to retire? Pass it on. And then there were committees. There were meetings with multiple people, and as the meetings went along, the number of people shrank, until there was me, basically. And I'm like, okay, Paul, I'll take it on. I'll keep this alive, because this body of knowledge, this curriculum, if you want to get formal about it, is so powerful. Because it's earth connected, it's grounded, it's not I'll heal you with my magical brainwaves. It's grounded, it's real, it's minerals, rocks, bones of the earth, nutrition, phytochemicals, plant powers, biochemistry, how does the Cori cycle work? What does my liver do? When you say detoxification, what's actually happening in the body? It's that kind of and at the same time, it's vitality. The life energy is what we serve as healers. That's what we serve.
Yeah. I feel like the curriculum at the school is just an amazing merging of science and spirit and experience and tradition. You really bring it all together, and it feels very complete, and it's just such a rich education that you're providing people that's transformative. It's changing so many people's lives. I know it changed my life.
Well, right on.
So I'm glad you continued this school. I remember
Yeah.
the first conversation I had with you because
Really? What did we talk about? Help me remember.
well, because we talked about herbalism and Lyme disease because that's what brought me
Oh,
to
that's
herbalism
right.
was Lyme and living in New York and getting Lyme disease. And then
Mm.
you just expressed to me that you had had a journey with Lyme as well, and that plants had helped you tremendously along the path. And so I was like, I need to learn from you. And I came to visit you and you had a snake around your neck and you're like, do you want to wear my snake? And I was
like, corn snake Rosie. Oh,
yeah,
she was the sweetest snake. I've never seen a snake be affectionate before like that.
Yeah, she was such a cuddler.
What? We're just all beings, living beings, It's like that universal life energy is in the snake too. Yeah, she was a doll. She'd wrap around and then she'd like kind of rub her little snaky head.
Yes.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah, so the Lyme thing, here's something interesting,
Yeah.
So this is why I always maintain a skepticism about diagnoses, especially the stuff when there's a lot of overlap of the symptoms, right? And like you can have fatigue, classic, it can be caused by how many different conditions, like many. Right. So, I think people tend to diagnose with what they know. And sometimes it hits it right on the nail, and that can be any kind of health person, or even if you don't diagnose formally. But so I had several different diagnoses, right? And one of them was Lyme disease. And it was interesting because it was from this lab that I later heard might be a little, overexcited to diagnose Lyme disease, right?
Interesting.
So there was just something a little not quite solid about the way that felt to me. So I tried some therapeutics. They're like, do this and this and this, and we'll kill the Lyme organisms with these natural fruits and vegetables, or like, vitamins and minerals and phytochemicals and stuff. And I tried it, and it didn't make me feel like it was helping me. I gave it a shot for a while, and I'm like, it's all the classic like Lyme killing herbs, like Artemisia and like whatever the hell people try to kill Lyme organisms with. Yeah. I'm quoting there because I have some skepticism about the direct Lymecidal effects, so to speak, of some of these things.
Yeah.
But I went with that for a while. I'm like, okay, chronic Lyme disease kind of makes sense. It fits, the description of that syndrome or disease or whatever fits how I experience my body and my, nervous system and everything. So I'm like, okay, maybe that's what I have. Maybe I need to try some different things for Lyme disease, because like it's human nature. We want to have a named disease entity. There's like, that's a good thing to have because now like what mysterious weirdness you're dealing with, right? And it's going to tell you, the things you need to do. So we love having that. But I know also that some things, could go into different camps, and the camp that you put them in kind of depends on your training and, your unexamined prejudgments or, your biases or whatever. So it's like, I know probably of a field of knowledge the most about phytochemistry and scientific fields. That's probably what I know the most about. And, I can kind of be like, maybe it is Lyme disease. And I kind of understand what they're saying about it, but I'm not so sure if that's real, So I always maintain a little bit of skepticism about it. So recently, I was like, you know what? I've done all the dietary and herbal things that I can think of to help myself feel better. And then I got COVID in March, probably.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's before there was, if you wanted a test, you were probably like in the ER or something. Right. There weren't a lot of tests around out here in the hills, And so I came down with it like, bam, man, did that hit hard. it kicked my butt. And it was like, I thought back to the worst sick that I ever was. And it was like a pretty hot influenza. You know, I mean, I didn't get pneumonia. I didn't have to go to the hospital, but I was like, yeah, I'm dead for a week in the bed with a bone broth, please. You know, but it was, dude, it was like 5 times that. Wow. And everybody has it. Some people, they get it, and it doesn't even get them.
Yeah, it's like nothing, and then other people, it's severe.
You know? And even though I was doing all the prevention things so that I wouldn't get it, I still got it. And I got it like fairly hard, right? And now hindsight, of course, you're like, yeah, you were like super stressed out in March. The country is like, what do we need to do here? Close everything? Like, how do you plan the future of a school? Can people be here? You know, it was intense. Everybody was having such an intense time with that, you know? And some of the people who were, you know, that make CSCH go were having intense personal things happen at the same time. And it's just like the whole universe was kind of stirred up, you know, back in March. And there were big fires, and like everybody's like, what is going on, you know? And it was super stressful, actually. And like, you know, when you're in something and you're like, okay, up we go, we've got to hold this thing together, you know, and you don't really allow yourself to like feel, you know, the effects of the stress. You're like, I'll take care of this later. Right now, it's like, all hands on deck, you know? So it was pretty intense there for a while, but man, we pulled it off. We morphed. We're like, okay, people, you know, here's this thing called Zoom. Let's use it. You know, whoa, what a challenge. And also to shift that like whole in-person relationship. Because at the school, we taste things. It's not just like, I'm going to talk about what this herb does. No, it's like, okay, everybody, we're going to experience this entity together. And we do what we call them provings, right? And, you know, everybody gets a little bit, and make sure there's no safety issues, right? But everybody gets a little bit of tincture, a little sip of infusion or whatever, and they taste it, right? They smell it even before they taste it. You're like, you know, you get that like cupping action going there, and and you snort on your, you know, cup of tea, you know, because you vibrate the surface of it with a kinetic energy that, you vibrate the surface of it. More essential oil molecules evaporate. You can smell them better. More signal is you got a better signal. You're like, I've got 4 bars, you know, when you get in there.
It's amazing. I remember that. And I do that. Like when I worked at a fine dining restaurant, we would taste wine. People would say that I had a pretty good nose. And I think it's because I would do that. I would just like blow air into the glass. A little bit more of a kind of a wind tunnel, I guess, effect.
And that's why you swirl the wine, you know, not just to see the legs of it, but to like slosh those volatile, you know, phytochemicals out of there. So you could pick them up. And I mean, such a direct communication with the brain, like lavender essential oil example, right? I met a guy one time who was an EMT, and he was very traumatized by something he had to deal with. And he would have panic attacks, you know, PTSD, right? And he said one time he was going into one, and his buddy stuck a open bottle of lavender essential oil under his nose, and he's like, dude, breathe it a lot. And he did, and he was like, I came down out of it, and I didn't have the panic attack. And I'm like, seriously? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, tell me all the details again. I want to remember this, you know? But you hear that from a lot of different people. I mean, it's a established, you know, anti-anxiety plant. It can have a really profound, like, you know, lavender. It's not just like the foo-foo lavender, you know. It's an intense herb, you know. And the essential oil can just bring you right in, you know, when you're freaking out or you're stressing out or you're making shit up. You're like, uh-oh. It can just be like, okay.
That's a powerful tool for right now, because I feel like a lot of people are dealing with anxiety and depression and stress and immune issues. I mean, there's just so much kind of on the surface right now for so many people. groups that are top of mind for you?
People are stressed out. We're like, what's going on? Hey, stop yelling at each other. Like, no, like there's some turmoil in the world right now, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it's always like you always like, you know, patterns of existence. There's like development, there's senescence, there's chaos, there's, you know, destruction, and then there's the phoenix comes along. Then there's renaissance, and then there's rebirth, you know, and then there's the next iteration, you know. I mean, that has happened all throughout human recorded history, and you know, things archaeologists can deduce, you know. I mean, that's a thing people go through, and it's like pretty intense right now because people are going, where are we going to go with this? What's going to happen? Is everything just going to get chaotic? Is everybody going to die? Like, what's going on? You know, people are really nervous, and like, you know, some people are like, nah, I think we'll be fine, or, you know, but there's a lot more anxiety out there. And then, you know, there's people that's like working from home with their children, their dog, their cat, and their parents. And
it is a tough reality right now.
You know, people are getting sick. Like, people are dying. Like, freaking 100, 300,000 people just extra died that wouldn't have died.
Yeah.
You know? You're like, oh, this is big stuff right now.
Yeah.
You know? So, of course, we feel anxiety. So, you know, what do we do? It's like, you know, anxiety isn't the enemy. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, we're all nervous. Why? There's just so much chaos in every realm, and people are having to make moral choices. Like, am I going to be a good person and do the right thing, or am I going to just kind of be a competitive jerk? Oh, community. Community. It's like other people aren't our competitors or our enemies.
Yeah.
Necessarily. You know? It's like, yeah, we're here to like get things do together, you know, be together, do things, you know, sing, dance. It's so much better with 20 people, believe me.
Yeah. I'm curious. That makes me think of Paonia. So you're running a farm. What's going on there?
God. This is so cool. I'm so excited about this, right?
Yeah.
So this year, talking about the school and the evolution of the school. So there's this amazing couple, John and Linda, and they're like, you know, we could do these things, and that way you could do those things. And I'm like, because you are better at these things than I am. You know, so we worked out this like symbiotic thing that we're doing now. So I have less of certain things I was doing before to do. So now I'm like, okay, elderberries. Yeah. So, you know, I have these really interesting people that have befriended me lately, and I'm like, so what would you do with elderberries? Because, you know, I was kind of like crowdsource the idea there and see what really clicks, you know. So a lot of people are like, hydrotherapy garden. And I'm like, hydrotherapy garden?
What does that look like? I've never...
Right? I know. I mean, like, what happens if you Google hydrotherapy garden? Chloe Marcellus, Happy Belly CSA. Yeah, she has this amazing herb and like vegetables and greens farm that's part of our farm. She comes, she's like, you know what you ought to do? Plant a hydrotherapy garden around a cedar hot tub. And a cold plunge pool. And she's like, put in a sauna too. And I'm like, maybe next year. But so with a deck and a wall and the tree, and like the water from it, when you have to drain it and clean it, all goes out into the garden. So it's built in. So water. Yeah, because that's a lot of water. There's like a hot tub out here. That's a lot of water. You don't want to respect it and use it appropriately. So she's like, you just rig that up and you could just take the water out of it every time you clean it, water the plants, because we have to water.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
And I'm like, I know. And I'm like, what would you plant there? And she's like, aromatic desert herbs. And I'm like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. Right? Like incredible. Herbs that are like Mediterranean herbs. Yeah. It's all warm. They're like radiating their aromas. A trellis around the edge of the deck, like a tall trellis with kind of pergola for hops vines to grow on. Because hops is big out here, right? This valley produces like amazing hops. Like the craft beer people are really like, oh, your hops. You know, it's a growing thing out here. This place is special. There's something that happens here that, like, I don't know how to explain it, but the food that grows in this valley and the herbs that come out of it are really delicious and powerful. Like, if it's the soil composition and the way the sun is and the altitude and the way that mountain air flows through and other things I don't even understand, but stuff that comes out of this valley is really super full of vitality and delicious. Yeah, I totally have to put the hydrotherapy garden in. But we have this outdoor kitchen space with a huge table, like an Amish, like, family dinner table. The thing is gigantic. Under a canopy, and there's an outdoor kitchen. And it's really nice to have people outside, especially now, around that table doing medicine making things. It's like, let's make aronia berry elixir. Here's the recipe. Let's do it, you know. So, but I want to enclose that space a little more, or have it have the potential of easily becoming enclosed, so that we can use a longer season, you know, because once it gets cold out here, it's like, you don't want to be doing things in the outdoor kitchen. We shut the water off so it doesn't freeze, you know. Oh, yes. Do you know about oh, yes?
No.
O-L-A-S, right? That's like the Spanish word for just pot in general. But there are these, it's a pretty word, so I like to use it. Oh, yes. And that's what they call them. So there's a neck, there's a beautiful vessel, almost like a Greek amphora. And it's very porous, low-fired clay. Kind of terracotta-ish.
Cool.
And so you bury them in the earth up to their little necks, and you fill them with water, like rainwater. And then you plant fibrous rooted plants, like annuals are really good, in a circle around it. And they have like cross sections and, you know, things they've imaged. The plants, like, their roots grow towards the Oya, and then they wrap around it, and then they just sip water out of it as required.
Oh, wow.
And man, they really work.
That,
you know?
Sounds beautiful.
Yeah. And I'm like the total newbie, you know, it's like, this is the first time I've ever messed with them. But no wonder people have been using them in dry climates for thousands of years in multiple places around the world. They say it cuts down on water like 70%. Like if you water them with a spray or something, 70% less water does the trick. I'm like, what? We need that. Drought. And yeah, I love passing stuff on, man. I love to nerd out on, like, what's your herb nerdery? Like, because herbalism is so vast that everybody can have a different thing. And, you know, this kind of goes with what you were asking earlier. It's like, what would you say to, you know, budding herbalists? And I'm like, find your specialty, man. Find what you're just passionate about. Like, what do you really care about in herbalism? What are you good at, you know? And then, like, find out a way to make that happen.
Just like hearing your stories and connecting with you, Lisa. I also want to honor your time as we're wrapping up. Is there anything else coming to the surface that you want to be sure to share?
Oh my goodness. I just want to tell you what we're all excited about.
Please.
So what we're planning. So we're planning a medicine making intensive.
Ooh,
so it'll be like Thursday through Monday, probably on one of the holiday weekends, where we're going to make some really, like, okay, you know, people, it's like, okay, I know how to make an infusion. I know how to make a decoction. I know how to make a maceration, soak a tincture in a jar. I got all that stuff. I can make salve. I'm like, okay, you want to see some cool stuff that you can do too? You know, so we kind of, you know, go to, like, you know, not the first level of learning herbal pharmacy, but the next couple of levels. We'll do some really interesting nerdy stuff. We've got all this crazy equipment. So they have, get this, they have a bioregenerative cacao plantation in Costa Rica. Yeah, dude. Amazing. It's like it's a whole ecosystem that they've worked. It's amazing. I'm just like, so he comes up here sometimes and makes cacao in our commercial kitchen. And, but the flavors are brilliant. So we're talking about like having, you know, we have a ceremonial space now. It's a yurt, and we've like made beautiful with sheepskins and wood stove and pretty lights and all the beautiful things. And so there's different groups that meet in there, right? So there's like men's groups, women's groups, new moon, full moon, different things, good ventilation. So I think we'll probably have a cacao ceremony, like find someone to come up and lead a cacao ceremony in there, and then do like make things with it, like a cacao body butter or whatever, you know, and eat it and drink it and just have a whole, you know, cacao themed weekend. So we just things like that. I'm putting together the structure of the apprenticeship program now. So people can come out and do, like we were saying earlier, various levels of apprenticeships. And like there are some live-in apprentices, some like, I'm here for a month and camping and my little pickup thing or my tent or whatever apprentices. So shorter and longer term, experiences of actually like working on an herb farm.
Cool.
Learning water, like doing vitalist practices, communicating with the plants, like doing the work and learning while you're working, and really getting your hands in the dirt and all the fun stuff and your toes in the mud. So all kinds of stuff like that we're planning, and more retreat opportunities too. So people are like, I am stressed out. I need to go to the mountains and sit in this chair and watch the stars and drink herbal tea and dip in the hot tub and relax in a healing environment. So we're developing more opportunities to do that kind of thing too. And this is what I'm so excited about, because I have the time. Like I've seen the visions for this place for several years, and I'm like, I'm like that when I have the time.
Same.
Yeah. So really excited about it, inviting everybody out, open and accepting to all types of humans who come with the right intentions.
Right.
And, it's just going for the variety this year and for the ability to stay here for longer, have some longer things. And we've got a videographer. He's so cool. We've got like this wonderful, talented local woman making us a new website. We've got like, so we get the 2 people in place to really help, stir the cauldron. Yeah. It's a big one. We need 3 paddles,
That's so exciting.
Yeah. Oh planted a bunch of stuff, we got 12 more Oyas to plant into the ground.
Wow.
Yeah, we're teaching ourselves about how to use way less water. Very important here.
Oh, it's crucial.
There's a massive amount of water in New England right now, but out here it's dry.
Yeah.
It's abnormally dry. We had a serious drought this year, and we're just like, I hope this doesn't keep up, but we have to use less water. It's the responsible thing to do. Yeah. Because, this whole valley, like the water comes from the mountains, but, it can get hot and dry. And we have to adapt to, learning how to grow our plants and our herbs and our food plants and everything using less water and having like natural heat mitigation, systems like root cellars and shade, like trees, water the trees. We're working on the water adaptations and being like, and being in right relationship with water, because, what our indigenous sisters and brothers did up north about the water is life. I mean, it's not just, that's a cool saying, let's get on that bandwagon. I mean, literally water is life.
We need it.
We need it. Yes. Sort of like a deity, It's like, thank you for my life, water, because if you didn't have it, you die. You wouldn't last very long, right?
So
have
true.
It. 70% of the weight of a human body-ish, right?
Yeah.
But we got very disrespectful, and we got out of right relationship with water as a civilization, as a nation. We messed up, and now people are like, we can't mess up anymore. Yeah. We messed up way too much. We've got to fix now. We've got to repair the damage that we caused. And how do you do that? You have to care, number one. And how do you care? You get into right relationship with water, respectful gratitude for the gifts and the blessings that water gives us. It gives us life. It's like, how could we're being rude to that which gives us life?
Yeah.
Who do we think we are? Nature's like, last chance, humans. Let's get ourselves into right relationship with the earth, with the water, with the air, with the fire. Yeah. We have to do that. We don't. It's not an option not to do that. Well, the option is do that or die eventually, and kill everyone else too. That's not okay. Where do we get the idea that was like an okay way to operate? Wait, there's a machine in the house where you pee into the water. You poop in there too. It's called a toilet. Everybody has one. They're like, wait, that's not good. That should go into the soil, be buried underneath.
Yeah.
That's not what water is for,
It is really bizarre. I wonder if we will, hopefully sooner than later, transition to compostable toilets or some way of not shitting in our water. I mean, that's just such a bad idea.
Toilets. Go for it.
Yeah.
Learn how to dig a proper latrine. Do what you can. Only flush every 3 times, not every time. Everybody can do that. You're like, oh, okay, a little icky, but whatever. You know.
Yeah.
When you brush your teeth, go trickle, 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 not, you know, there's so much. People could probably use half the water with very little effort, actually, that we use, you know.
Definitely.
But it all comes down to respecting it. It comes down to knowing water and knowing why it matters and knowing that we are water. Like water is one of the, and when you do develop that reverence and that respect for water and that gratitude for water, it makes you feel so good, you know, because returning to that respectful, right relationship with nature, that's what we absolutely have to do. And when you do it, you know it's right. When you feel that, you're like, this is how humans should do. We got real distracted for a while there, but it doesn't work anymore. We've got to pay attention now.
Indeed. I'm glad you brought it up. And it just reminds me of the importance of having gratitude for everything that is nourishing us and for our teachers. Like, I'm just so thankful that I got to learn from you and be in class with you. And it was
all worth it.
It was such a sacred time and transformative time in my life. And I know it's funny when I do talk to other people, they always say there's always like how we met Lisa and how how magical and fun and funny it always is. Like, you're just such an incredible storyteller, and I love sitting with you. So thank you for.
I have fun with it, you know, and it's like it kind of runs in the family. I'm a nerd, you know, but I've actually embraced that a little more later. I kind of like enjoy talking to people. It's so much fun to talk about these sorts of things. It's like you don't talk about them with everybody every day, you know.
Right.
It's like, hey, how's it going at the grocery store? Do you know about these anthocyanins? You know, they're just like. So it's really fun to, you know, talk to other herbalists and share that enthusiasm and our different, like, and everybody has something to learn from everybody. You know what I mean? It's like, it's so cool when you get a bunch of herbalists together because they all have these different specialties and you know, things that they're really interested in and that they've tried a bunch and that they know about. We're also planning a gathering of herbalists, herbal teachers and practicing herbalists, clinical herbalists to come together and just have like a big, like what they used to call in the 60s, a big teach-in. Everybody kind of, you know, kind of casually organized and like does a talk or engages, you know, people in a talk about what they're currently fascinated about. And I'm like, aronia berries. So we're planning that for this sometime this summer, fall, maybe fall. I think it'll be really fun. That's the story.
So I'm so excited to share this with the world. It's wonderful to be in touch with you again. So thank you again so much for this time.
Okay. You're welcome. Have a lovely.
You too.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye. Toodaloo.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you would like, please connect with me on Instagram at Time in the Studio Podcast. You can also connect with Lisa on Instagram at Elderberry's Farm. And yeah, thanks so much for being here. Please share the episode if you resonate with it, or you can leave a review on Apple Podcasts as well. That makes a big difference. And if you enjoyed this conversation and you want to hear more, you can go join Patreon to listen to the almost 2-hour conversation that I got to have with Lisa Ganora. It was so fun and full of more laughs and wilder stories that I couldn't share with the general public. So I hope you enjoy that, and I hope you have a great week. We'll see you next week. Take care. Toodaloo.